we were all naive then. We all believed that the web will connect us all. Everyone's speaking about user experience. Not many of us talk about the agent experience. Should software adapt? Or should we? And fortunately or unfortunately, there won't be any answers by the end of this presentation, but I will ask you to join me in some thought experiments, in asking questions. And as Frota mentioned, there will be much more of it. Many questions without answers, or maybe for you to... By the way, do I need the microphone or is it fine with... Yeah? Microphone works, okay. So we're gonna stick to the microphone. Yes? All right. So this is the thought experiment. And yes, the presentation is not AI generated. I put much effort into that. So we gathered here to talk about the world that is post-software. So to me, the post-software world is where the thesis of the dead internet comes true. So let's imagine the world where the open internet, the one as we know of today, that we can imagine in our heads when we think about internet, is dead. The promise of a global village is no more. There is no interconnection between worlds. There is no free, available knowledge all over. You can't work from everywhere you need for whoever you need or want. In this internet, the space is fragmented. It's filled with vicious, dangerous entities, both human-like and digital. Those who can be understood and we can get their motives and maybe catch their hand. But there are also entities that move by order of magnitude faster than us, who are impossible for us to contain, for us to understand, and for us to be safe from. The only safe havens that we've got in that world are those of corporations, of large entities, world of communities, world of databases, maybe local webs, just the interconnected network of beings, let's say in this room, by a LAN or Wi-Fi maybe. That's the extent of the interconnectivity we've got. Obviously, that's the world of Cyberpunk 2077 by CD Projekt Red, but also that's the world of Neuromancer by William Gibson. That's the world of many cyberpunk and sci-fi novels that we know of, and I'm really glad that you mentioned some sci-fi novels previously. But maybe that's also the world that we are living in right now. Because the author of this book, William Gibson, famously said at one point, the future is here. Maybe I got it clear. But it's just not widely distributed yet. And I would add on top of that, the future is already thought out. The concept that we struggle to address right now were solved either in media, in pop culture, in books, games, movies, maybe some philosophical treatises, but also in the real world, but in a different part of the world than that we are looking at. So I would ask the question, what can we learn from all of those media pieces, from maybe old sci-fi movie, one of the first cyberpunk books, and maybe how can those lessons direct us into building? Or maybe we should look at what has already been built. Maybe something in the real world, but outside of the bubble. Maybe on a different continent. And see how this translates to the other one. But also, considering the current state of affairs, I would ask a question for us to answer when we are building. And I know I'm using building in here, and it may seem that I'm, speaking to software developers. But that's just one of many, because I believe everyone in here is a creator, is a builder of some sort. That be creating a business, creating a software, art, music, or just you as a person. You're building something. And right now, let's be honest, everyone's building something in a digital world. Everyone's building software. So the first thing I encourage you to think of is that there is no one open worldwide internet. And there never was. It's a dream, it's a vision that we've got in our Western hemisphere. We've got that dream that had been true 20 years ago when open source was on the rise. We were all naive then. We all believed that the web will connect us all. But right now, not only in cyberpunk with the Blackwell cutting off the most of internet from the public, also in our real world, our internet is fragmented. We've got the Great Firewall of China. We may call the Great Firewall of Russia. But also, for those AI folks, you might have noticed that, for example, we've got some walls of AI models availability. We still cannot use, let's say, Llama Mavericks. And I believe this will continue. We will fragment ourselves. We will need to think how to build enclosed and not worldwide internet. Maybe by using open source models on local devices. I strongly believe that. The other lesson, and this one I believe is the best taken out from the real world, is that the supply chain doesn't need humans anymore. What I mean? Well, right now let's imagine a warehouse. Typically, you would imagine people with crates, shelves of items, and trucks maybe, loading onto trucks. I remember I was doing that 15 years ago. But right now, we're going towards the path of dark warehouses, where humans have no access whatsoever to those places. Those are warehouses where there is no light. There's no infrastructure for humans. Only maybe a fraction of employees, of people working in that warehouse, would be somewhere outside on the outskirts of that building, just monitoring the output. And even though we've been building warehouses for thousands of years, right now the paradigm of building a warehouse changes. When we are designing for humans, it needs to be human optimized. When we're designing for, let's say, robots, it needs to be robot optimized. And when we go into a software world, that makes even more sense, at least to me. Because everyone's speaking about user experience, the usability of the software, that we all need to know where to click, what to type. But still, not many of us talk about the agent experience. Not many of us think that maybe the other way out. Many of us don't really consider that even now, even today, we've got such dark warehouses in our internet. We've got protocols connected to each other without any human oversight. And when we are building software right now, we can think about agent-to-agent protocols. We can think about building things that no human eye would see anytime in the future. Just a space for agents and the window for us to look at. Well, right now the proof of concept of that is, let's say, Moldbook. I believe that's the proof of concept, because we've got some AI agents, and it might be rough, but it's the worst technology that we will ever have. It's gonna grow better. And the whole user interface for us to read those conversations is pointless. It's just for us, for fun, for the underlying infrastructure of agents. It doesn't make sense and will be useless. So the lesson in here, I believe, is that when we're building, let's think about agent experience and maybe even go down the path of creating a dark warehouse of some sorts. But also maybe take a different look at something also dark. Dark kitchens. Do you know what a dark kitchen is? It's a it's a place without a storefront, without a table, without waiters, without a cashier whatsoever. It's just a kitchen somewhere in the back with a door for a DoorDash or Uber, the delivery guy just coming in, picking up your order that you got yourself on an iPhone and delivering it to you, or to the nearest convenience store like Żabka and just dropping off. And in this case, you stop interacting with the place itself. Your interaction changes once again. And in here, it's a human to platform, human to agent. You just put an order and get your food. You don't bloody care how it's being made. You don't care about ambiance of the space. You just want to get your mouth fed, and that's it. And in here, even people are not necessary on the other side of the platform. But also when we are right now even vibe coding, I would argue that we are kind of cooking in the dark. We are just interacting with a platform and expecting some results. So the second lesson or the question when it comes to building, to creating stuff in the software world is that maybe I should go down the path of a human interacting with platform. How would that look like? I don't know. But obviously, speaking about food, we also have, let's say, omakase stands. In Japan, as Frotam might have told you, or might tell you later on, there are special places, so-called omakase. I know there are even a couple of places in Warsaw doing that. Really small, cozy places, let's say 7 seats, and there's a sushi master. And each sushi piece is a curated experience by that particular human to another particular human. And it's fucking expensive. Like, you get, let's say, 10 pieces of sushi. It costs you 600 zlotys, 800 zlotys. Why? Because you buy not only food, but also the experience, the knowledge, and the other person. So, by some sort, I can say the human to human interaction becomes a luxury. So maybe that's our way to build something, to curate that human to human interaction and get a hefty margin out of it. Could be. But the one thing that is, at least to me, but from what I heard from previous presentations, not only to me, quite obvious, that, well, in the era of AI, we've got the abundance of data, abundance of interaction, abundance of stimuli. We all need to cut ourselves off. We all call for walls and gates. We don't need that constant stream of slop, of news, of content pouring down onto us. What we want is curation. What we want is a gateway that will just let proper things in. Only those things that will benefit either us or our community. But also abundance, and right now it's not intentional, but I see great minds think alike. Abundance also calls for higher abstraction levels. And let it be programming languages. We moved from assembler to higher level of C to Python, And right now, I'd say like vibe coding, talking to LLM is yet another abstraction layer of code. And that's the same with, for example, data visualization. When you're working with data, you might think about looking at tables. But right now, in a data analytics community, and it's once again not so new because in all those books from 60s, 70s, 80s, we are already discussing that, is that our frontal cortex processes data 1,000 times faster. So maybe, just maybe, we don't need tables anymore. We can visualize data. We can give it a shape and let our brains process it in a different way. And for example, in this Neuromancer novel, by the way, this is the book that created the concept of the Matrix, the first one, and most cyberpunk books and tropes. And by the way, I believe directors of Cyberpunk Red also were reading and copying most of it. In there, the World Wide Web is obviously dangerous, fragmented, filled with rogue AIs. But when you connect to the internet, you don't see the interface. You don't see the streams of data. You don't see numbers, letters, and all of that, or binary code. No. You see a 3D shapes, representation of data on a higher level of abstraction because there's just too much data for us to process it in some other way. So maybe this is the way, trying to lift something out of its complexity and make it more abstract. So I believe we've got similar thoughts with Intenti here. But also, I might say, related to that walls, that where there's toxic fallout outside, we all see the slop and bullshit that's going on every social media and not only. How can you trust any media piece? How can you trust any video or image? How can you trust this is a person you're talking to? Or how can you trust this is a true market signal and not something that's been just, artificially created? How can we address that? By maybe potentially building those walls, trying to curate what's coming in to us from the internet. And I believe, once again, we had a discussion with Frota about that some time ago when it comes to pop culture. There's literally too much of content. There's abundance of it, and you need a person who will curate it for you. You need either an algorithm or a person, depending what you are willing to pay. But some method of traversing that toxic space that is quite dangerous to our health and mind. But also there's a dumpster fire inside, within our walls, within our communities, within our devices, within our minds. Like, let's not lie to each other that we are those in order. Let's not lie to each other that our companies and our businesses are pristine. No. Like, all the all AI consultants and, let's say, data processing companies try to sell us that promise that they will put our business in order, that they will put our life in order. I don't know, we will have Fitatu and other food tracking tools to be sure that the intake is optimal. We will have Aura rings and Whoop bands. We will have, I don't know, data lakes or data swamps, snowflakes. And obviously, it seemed to be working, but according to data, well, IBM just recently said that maybe 99% of the public data is already being scrapped by AI. So there's just 1% of the public data available. But when it comes to the private data, let's say what mostly corporations have, because let's not lie to each other, your data is public data and you don't have any secrets anymore, not to us. But all of that private data, it's 99% that it's never seen any AI, that no algorithm have seen yet. Well, there's quite a lot to address, I believe. So maybe there's a way for us to build inside, or maybe there is a way to build a curation once again, but within our communities as we grow more and more distant, conflicted, and the cohesion of our social group dissolves. Is there a way to build something that would keep our village tied together? And well, you can imagine that right now the code is cheap because everyone can generate it. And as David said, we should be learning how to code. We should be using code, but well, we should be using data as well. And at least that public data is also cheap, is available. But as we all know, this software isn't. Because without that knowledge, without that expertise and expert edge, as many of you before me had told, we're generating more and more slop. And it's not a viable solution, at least for us. And we can imagine that, or even claim right now, the world is fragmented. And it's continued to be fragmented, even within EU, even within United Nations. And I believe everyone noticing recent news might agree with that, that we should be focusing on a really particular niche. We cannot be thinking of creating something for everyone, for the global world, global village, for the world, or even for a nation as a whole. Let's start small. Especially since right now the users of the internet are of a different species, are of a different speed. Because in this internet of I want to say Internet of Things, and I don't know why. In this internet, there are agents, there are automations, there are humans, there are elders, and each of those need a different curation. So which one of those will you address in your creations? Because let's ask ourselves, should software adapt? Or should we adapt to this ever-changing world and the post-software reality? Yes, I have no freaking idea. I'm asking you, please help. Because so, what should we build? What should be our guiding light? I have no freaking idea, honestly. I want to ask as many questions and raise discussion because the more I think about the world, the more I think about the software, it becomes more and more convoluted. I get anxious, I get lost. And the only solace I get, surprisingly, is from old books. Because as it seems like everything has been already thought out. The best books on artificial intelligence, when it comes to technology, usage, ethics, law, were written 8 years ago. Because if a piece of literature survives for a longer period than a year or two, it means that there's some value in it. That's why I really discourage you from reading or even, getting too deep into the newest and most recent AI books because they are written for profit. But when you read Lem, when you read Vonnegut, when you read Gibson, Peter Watts, when you watch some old anime, it might turn out that, for example, Ghost in the Shell has a lot of inspiration and has more truth than that would be anticipated from the creation of fiction. So look around the world around you and go through the media pieces and works of art that surround you. And through looking at it, through maybe different lenses, ask yourself, what should I build? And is there a lesson that I can pull out of it? Cheers. Thank you. Yes, please. Are we shouting or I can bring... Okay, I've got the other one.
Let's exchange microphones.
Absolutely.
I would shorten that question and ask, should we build?
Yeah.
Then, instead of what, I would ask, why?
Mm.
And that's my question.
Yeah.
Why?
Because we've got the innate need to build, I'd say. That to create is to be human. That every human being that has got something in us that makes us want to create something. And once again, that doesn't need to be a software. But as a child, I built with, Lego. I created something just for the sake of creation. I write poetry just for the sake of poetry. I write journal just for the sake of journal. Right now, I try to set up my own startups, my own businesses, just for the sake of building. And that's something that, touches that spark somewhere inside that I don't know if I can explain properly. Yeah. Cool. Anyone else, or shall we go to sleep? Yeah, we can continue.
Yeah. You started. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah, there was a question previously about the cost of the should we and why should we. So how do you incorporate that into your thinking, that just because I can doesn't mean I should? That's the idea here. So because you're posting that, what you're posing is, I can, therefore I will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and therefore
no matter the cost, no matter the outcome, no matter the circumstance, no matter the context.
Yeah. Therefore,
I can build and I will build. And fuck
I
everybody
need
else.
to look for good ideas. I need to look to build in the right way. And why I think that? And I believe the answer will be with a short story. And
the world is filled with people that
Yes.
had great ideas and they built towards those.
Yeah.
There was the famous painter that built towards that awesome idea of his. So this is the reason I'm asking, why should be the most important question before what?
Yeah. For fun, yeah, for the loss as well. But I'd say exactly why. It's exactly because of that person willing to build. And that's, that will be controversial. I believe, for example, we should have, like, when I'm, other way around. When I'm talking with some people and they're like, oh no, I'm not gonna have any kids because there are way too many kids already and the world is gonna, be destroyed by them. For me, it's a folly because you are capable of shaping that child in a way that can potentially save the world. And those people who don't fucking care, they're gonna have children anyway.
You're talking about the idiocracy kind of situation.
Yeah. So in here, that's the same case. People will continue to build. People will continue to create and destroy. So if our creations can tip the scale towards the good, I say, let's go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree, but there is a moral dilemma here. Who decides what's good? Like I said with the Austrian painter example, he thought he was building towards good. So the rest of the world decided, no, this is not the good direction.
So
And
history.
we have the same situation happening right now. So there is I understand your point, and I do agree with it. I'm for the fuck of it. I'm just asking why.
Yeah, I like it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.